From the archives of the Midnight Society, we present a case that defies explanation. It concerns the disappearance of a freelance editor named Alex Turner, who vanished from his apartment, which was found locked from the inside. The police report noted no signs of forced entry, but it did mention, in a confused footnote, several minor architectural inconsistencies within his bedroom. They found his phone on the nightstand, containing a series of increasingly terrified audio memos. The file you are about to hear is our reconstruction of his final days. It is a story that asks a simple, terrifying question: what if the dark isn't empty? I've always been a creature of routine. Some people find it boring, but I find it comforting. It's a foundation in a chaotic world. And the most important part of that routine is this room, my bedroom. It's more than just a place to sleep. It's my sanctuary. After a long day of editing other people's chaotic thoughts, this is the one place on earth that is entirely, predictably mine. Every book on the shelf is in its proper place. The bed is always made the same way. The faint hum of the city outside the window is my lullaby. I know every creak in the floorboards, every scuff on the wall. It's a space where the rules are simple, where the geometry is stable. You turn on the light, the room is here. You turn it off, the room is still here, just waiting in the dark. I always found that thought comforting, the idea that my safe space was constant, immutable. I had no idea how wrong I was. I had no idea that my sanctuary was also a hunting ground. It started on a Tuesday. I finished my work, went through my usual routine, and stood at the door to my bedroom. I flicked the switch, and the darkness that fell was different. It's hard to explain. It wasn't just an absence of light. It felt heavier, thicker. The familiar, comforting hum of the city from my window was gone, as if the darkness itself was a perfect soundproofing material. I stood there in the doorway for a full minute, listening, but there was nothing to hear. The silence was absolute, profound. It felt ancient. I shook my head, laughing at myself. Just tired, just my brain playing tricks on me after staring at a screen for 10 hours. I shuffled to my bed, the familiar path now feeling alien and uncertain in the oppressive black. I pulled the covers up, and I remember thinking one last strange thought before I fell asleep. The air in here feels older. The next morning, everything seemed normal. The sun was shining. The city was humming its usual tune. I felt foolish for my late-night paranoia. I went about my morning, made coffee, and came back to my room to make the bed. That's when I saw it. It was a tiny detail, the kind of thing only I would ever notice. The book on my nightstand. The night before, I had specifically placed a copy of Moby Dick there, ready to read a few pages. But the book on the nightstand now was a collection of Poe's short stories. Moby Dick was back on the bookshelf, slotted perfectly into its alphabetical spot. It was impossible. I live alone. The doors were locked. I stood there for 5 minutes, just staring, trying to rebuild my memory of the previous night. I must have done it myself. I must have been more tired than I thought, gotten up in the night, and swapped the books without even realizing it. It was the only logical explanation. It had to be. But as I placed the Poe book back on the shelf, a cold, tiny splinter of doubt lodged itself in my mind. That night, I decided to run an experiment. My scientific mind needed proof. Data to either confirm or deny the creeping paranoia. I wasn't going to rely on my faulty memory. I was going to create a variable. After my routine, I went to the nightstand. I took a quarter from my pocket and wiped it clean. I placed it perfectly in the center of the wooden surface. I even used a small ruler from my desk to measure it, ensuring it was exactly 6 inches from the front and 4 inches from the side. I took a photo of it with my phone, the timestamp a perfect digital witness. Then I took a deep breath, walked to the door, and looked back at the single, shiny coin, my small anchor to a stable reality. I flicked the switch. The same heavy, silent, oppressive darkness fell over the room, but this time, I knew for certain, the darkness was being watched. I woke up before my alarm, my heart pounding. pounding with a nervous energy. I didn't turn on the light. I used my phone's flashlight, sweeping it across the room and onto the nightstand. It was gone. The quarter wasn't in the center. It was now sitting 2 inches to the left, right on the edge. A cold wave of both terror and validation washed over me. I wasn't crazy. It was real. I quickly took another photo of the moved coin. My plan was to send both pictures, the before from last night and the after from this morning, to my sister to prove I wasn't losing my mind. I opened my photo gallery. I found the new picture, and then I scrolled back to find last night's photo, and my blood turned to ice. It had changed. The photo from last night, my perfect time-stamped proof, now showed the coin already 2 inches to the left. The darkness hadn't just moved the coin, it had reached back in time and edited the proof that it was ever in the center at all. It was flawlessly rewriting reality, and I was the only one who remembered the truth. The photograph was a dead end. Digital proof was useless against something that could rewrite data. I needed something physical, something analog, something so real and simple that it couldn't be denied. That night, before turning out the lights, I took a graphite pencil and a ruler, and I drew a line, a single perfect razor-thin line on the wall, connecting the bottom left corner of the window frame to the baseboard. It was an act of pure, desperate defiance, a surveyor's mark against the void. I documented its exact length, its angle, its position relative to the floorboards. This, I thought, was my anchor. It couldn't change a photograph of a physical mark. It couldn't erase a line drawn in graphite on painted drywall. It was a scar I was making on my own reality. A mark to prove that the room I would leave in the darkness would be the same one I returned to in the light. I felt a surge of foolish scientific confidence. I had created a controlled experiment. Now all I had to do was wait for the results. I woke up feeling a sense of dread, so heavy. It was like a physical weight on my chest. I flicked on the light, my eyes immediately darting to the wall. The line was gone, not smudged, not faded. It had vanished completely, leaving the paint beneath it pristine and untouched. But that wasn't what made me sick. That wasn't what made the world tilt on its axis. The window, the entire window had moved. It was now 3 feet to the right of where it had been my entire life. The wall where it had once looked out onto the city street was now a perfect, smooth, continuous surface. There was no sign of plaster, no hint of patchwork. The wall was flawless. The geometry of my sanctuary had been fundamentally and impossibly altered. It was a violation of every law of physics, of reason, of sanity. The stillness hadn't just erased my pencil mark. It had erased the very wall the mark was on and rebuilt it from nothing. It wasn't just moving things in my room anymore. It was moving my room. I did what any sane person on the verge of madness does. I called my sister. I needed an anchor, an outside observer. I could hear the worry in her voice as I frantically tried to explain, the words tumbling out of me in a torrent of panicked nonsense. The window, Sarah. It's moved. It's on the wrong wall. I sent her a picture. I sent her old pictures from my apartment to prove it had been different. There was a long, terrible pause on the other end of the line. Then her voice, soft and full of a gentle pity that was worse than any accusation. "Alex," she said, "honey, the window in that picture is in the exact same place. It's always been there. You've been working too hard. You're not sleeping. Maybe you should talk to someone." I hung up. The photos on my phone had changed. Her memory had been rewritten. The stillness wasn't just editing my room. It was editing the entire world around it, isolating me on a tiny, ever-shrinking island of truth that only I could remember. The next change was an act of pure oppression. I woke up, and the ceiling was lower. Not by much, maybe 6 inches. Just enough that the room felt wrong, compressed. The air felt heavy. The light from the lamp seemed to struggle to fill the reduced space. I stood in the middle of the room, and I could feel it, a physical pressure on the top of my head, a claustrophobic dread that had nothing to do with the size of the room and everything to do with its intention. The corners of the room were no longer perfect right angles. They were subtly off, creating a nauseating, disorienting effect, like looking at a drawing with the perspective skewed. It was making the room unlivable for a human. It was adjusting the dimensions, the very geometry of the space, to suit a different kind of occupant. I was no longer a resident in my own bedroom. I was an infestation. I was a foreign body in a place that was slowly, methodically being prepared for something else. And that's when I finally understood. My scientific mind, my editor's brain, finally pieced it all together. The moved book, the edited photograph, the relocated window, the lowered ceiling. This wasn't a haunting. A haunting is an echo, a memory of something that used to be there. This was the opposite. This was a creation. It wasn't trying to scare me away. Scaring me was just a byproduct of the process. I was thinking like a human, assuming this was about me. It wasn't. The stillness, the heavy, silent darkness, was a builder. It was an architect. It was a cosmic entity that had found a small, pliable pocket of reality and was slowly renovating it to match its own native dimension. It wasn't haunting my room. It was terraforming it. And I was just the original, flawed material, the native species that needed to be cleared away before the new construction could be complete. I wasn't being haunted. I was being evicted from reality. I couldn't let it in. If the darkness was the architect, then light was my only weapon, my only shield. That night, I decided I would not sleep. I would not surrender the room to its nightly renovations. I spent an hour dragging every single source of light I owned into the bedroom. 2 floor lamps, 3 desk lamps, a string of Christmas lights I found in a closet. I plugged them all in, daisy chaining extension cords, until the room was a blinding, humming sanctuary of artificial daylight. I barricaded the door with my dresser and sat on the floor, my back to the wall, my eyes fixed on the shadows. I was determined to outlast it, to hold the line. If the darkness couldn't fall, it couldn't build. For the first time in days, I felt a sliver of control. It was a fragile, desperate hope, the kind of hope a man has when he's trying to hold back the tide with a teacup. But it was all I had. It didn't come for the darkness. It came for the light. Around 3 a.m., the buzzing started, a low, resonant hum that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Then, the lamp in the far corner began to unmake itself. The metal stand softened, twisting and elongating into a shape that defied physics. The fabric of the lampshade didn't burn. It just dissolved, crumbling into a fine gray powder that vanished before it hit the floor. The light bulb flickered, and I watched in horror as the glowing filament inside the glass turned to a black, brittle ash. The light died. Then the next lamp began to do the same, and the next. It wasn't breaking them. It was erasing the very concept of them, deconstructing them atom by atom. My fortress of light was being dismantled by a force I couldn't comprehend. The stillness didn't need the absence of light to work. It was simply stronger in the dark. It was coming for me, and it was turning off my lights one by one. When only one lamp was left, flickering and dying, the final change happened. The bedroom door, the one I had barricaded, was gone. The wall was a smooth, unbroken surface. My escape was sealed off, and where the door had once been, a new opening tore itself into the fabric of my room. It wasn't a door, it was an archway, a perfect smooth archway that looked out into nothing. A perfect silent, starless void. The stillness. It wasn't just a property of the darkness anymore. It was a place, an entirely different dimension, and a doorway to it was now open in my bedroom. I understood then. It wasn't just evicting me. It had finished the construction. It had built a bridge, and now it was inviting me in. I could hear a sound from the archway, a faint whispery sound like wind through dead leaves. It was a sound that promised silence, a sound that promised an end to the fear. It was a sound that promised peace. The light is gone. The door is gone. There is a new door now. It's quiet in there. So quiet. I think I finally understand what it wants. It's not a monster. It's just lonely. It's been building a room for a friend. It's been remodeling this space to make me more comfortable, to make it feel more like it's home, so I won't be so scared when I finally step through. My name is Alex Turner. No, that's not right. My name is a sound that is fading. I am a thought that is being unthought. I am the final piece of furniture for a room that is no longer on earth. I'm going home now. It's so quiet there. It's so still. That was the final entry on Alex Turner's phone. When police finally breached the apartment, they found the bedroom empty. There was no sign of a struggle. There was no sign of the impossible archway described in his final moments. There was only his phone sitting on the nightstand and a room where the laws of architecture seemed to have been gently and terrifyingly bent. The case remains open, another unsolved disappearance, a chilling testament to the idea that some doors, once opened, can never be closed again, and that some silences are not empty, they are waiting. The archives of the Midnight Society are now closed,